so sorry we're late. We're having technical difficulties. So welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight for my Mindset Warriors Facebook Live on getting out of an emotional hole. So like I said in my little live earlier on, this is super exciting for me. It comes really naturally for me because I've been getting myself out of emotional holes for 18 months now. Before then, not so much, just pretty much staying in them there for quite a few days. But now I'm rocking getting out of them fairly quickly. So I would love to tell you how I do this. Before I do, I just want to say thank you so much, guys, recently for the tidal wave of love that's coming from the Mindset group towards me and everyone else involved and the group itself. I'm totally buzzing off it. It's incredibly rewarding for me to be able to give to you guys and to hopefully try and work towards all of us changing our mindsets together so that we can be our best selves and do the best we can in our aesthetic businesses. So thank you for that. Just wanted to honour you because it's just been totally delightful. All the inboxes, people winning and jumping off cliffs in a good way and telling me about their problems that we can try and help with. So thank you. So bad states. I want to start with a story. Okay, so I 2 years ago it was 2016. In 2015, Tim's mum, who has osteoporosis and Parkinson's, took a real turn for the worst, almost exactly 3 years ago. We thought she was going to die, and she was in a really bad place in hospital for months, and it was atrocious. It was really kind of a really worrying time for us. Tim obviously wasn't loving life at the time, and it was incredibly stressful for us. I was pregnant with Xander, and then we had him in the October, and then 2.5 months later I went back to Skin Viva full time. And I had him with me. I also had an au pair, which was amazing. I'd had her for 5 months. She came in, I breastfed at work, and she kind of walked him and things like that. That was great. I didn't have that for Jasper. But it was an incredibly stressful time. I had a small baby, a 3-year-old, 2.5-year-old, and all this responsibility, looking after. I feel like I'm like the mum of 20 plus people at Skin Viva as well at the time. And I came straight back into, in the January, some tricky issues with a couple of colleagues. This was, one of whom in particular is no longer with us, really tricky emotionally. And what with that issue that I was dealing with immediately pretty much after having given birth, being full-time, a long commute, feeling like I was kind of looking after the world, it really wasn't a good time for me. And by the summer, I was pretty much at a low ebb. And you know when you kind of find yourself, I don't know if anyone else has this, where you kind of find yourself in the fetal position on the kitchen floor at nighttime kind of crying? That was me. I was in a really bad place. And it was actually, at that time, like a chronically bad place. Just one more little funny anecdote involved in this bad place was, I don't know if anyone else has had this, but our baby for about 5 months, he pooed in the bath there, just every single night. Nice little poo soup there in the bath. So that really added to kind of sent me over the edge. Oh, by the way, guys, send me a 1 if you are watching live and a 2 if you drop me a 1 if you're not watching live and a 2 if you're watching the replay. So I'd love to see that you are here. So it was a really bad time for me, and like I said, there was quite a lot of fetal positions and quite a lot of kitchen floor activity, and Tim said to me in the end, look, we've got to do something about this. So I actually went on antidepressants at that time, which was great for me. So this leads me on to my next kind of point, which is that tonight when I'm talking about bad states, like I am not purporting to be replacing any mental health professionals or any medication, so continue with your medication. But my point is, like, this is not me saying that I can solve everything, all of the depths of you. It's just me saying, let's actually, for possibly the first time in our lives, let's actually admit that there is a way out of our bad states that we go into during this roller coaster that being an entrepreneur is. Because let's face it, it's woo! Oh no! Oh, so wonderful! Oh no, I'm a bad person. It's very much a roller coaster. And during that time, there will be highs, but there will also be lows. So I would like to help you with some of those lows. But if you are low for a long time, then obviously seek proper help, not brand help. So That's my first point, is that actually during that time 2 years ago, I never thought to myself, oh, I wonder if there's some tools out there that will help me when I'm in the fetal position on the kitchen floor. I didn't. I literally just expected that to be my existence. I didn't even think about it. And now I have a completely different mindset when it comes to it. I think to myself, how can I get out of this place? How can I get back to serving people or whatever it might be that I'm rocking at that time? How can I do that? Tim, can I just say, if you I always kind of feel like I wanted you to interact, to like help me with the interaction, but like I don't want you having to sort of stand on your haunches. So maybe sit down. Like I feel like a bit.
Okay,
like...
I'm reading the comments.
Okay, cool.
I'm waiting.
I just feel I just feel a bit anxious when someone's a bit like sort of standing around for you. Sorry, guys, just.
I'll get a chair for next time.
Keep it real.
Yeah, I'm reading the comments. So if anyone wants to chip in and say something, then I'm waiting for those.
Okay, thank you. So. We have to admit that we can get out of those sort of temporary blips. That's our first point of call. You have to admit you've got a problem and admit that you can get out of the problem. It's such a British thing, I think, in our culture to think that, oh, it's just part of life. In fact, some people even revel in it. They're even like, oh no, the terrible weather. Oh God, someone's done a road rage on me this morning. You can enter an office and people just moan at you the first thing you do and get through the door. And it's almost seen as almost like social kudos in being like the grumpiest, moaniest moaner. You kind of get like, oh, Jean, she's such a moaner. Oh, crazy Jean. He was like, no, Jean, fuck off. Like, I'm trying to live my life in a good way. I'm trying to live my life. I'm trying to be positive and not like positive. Just I'm trying to keep myself on enough of an even keel with a few genes I can possibly come across in my day that allows me to be my best self and serve the world in the best way I can. So. Do one, Jean. Oh no, I'm being negative. I'm being Jean. Oh. Anyway, we need to stop being Jean and we actually need to take control of our minds. We are in control of our minds. So, my next point that I wanted to come on to after we've accepted that we can come out of our negative states is I want to talk a little bit, just briefly, about the 6, or Tim would say 7, human needs. So this is a Tony Robbins concept, and it's just really important foundation work for building our house, building the state change house. We need to understand ourselves a little bit. So when I finish this live tonight, I will drop in the comments a link to this amazing Tony Robbins podcast which describes the 6 human needs. But I'm just going to give you a super potted version of a couple of minutes, but it's really important because I'll refer back to it later when we're thinking about state change. So, 6 human needs. We as humans are always in the pursuit of our human needs, and there are 2 ways we can get that. Ways that will serve us and will enable us to reach our goals, or ways that will not serve us and will be detrimental to ourselves and those around us. So here they are, the 6 human needs. The other thing, one more thing to say about them is that some people are more seeking of certain human needs than others. So I have 2. We usually have about 2 that are the most prevalent and kind of we go after the most. So the first one is the need for certainty. Very simple. It's the need to be able to feed your kids, to be able to have a roof over your head, and to know what's about to occur next, sort of have a sort of certain degree of certainty. That's, I think, the most fundamental of human needs. The next one is variety, because everyone's just going to get bored if we're just certain. So holidays and films that you haven't seen at the cinema, those give us a little bit of variety, keep things fresh. The next need is an interesting one. It's the need for significance. Now, this one can be pretty tricky. Everyone needs it, even people who say, oh God, I just don't want any attention on me. I'm just really like a shy person. I don't want anyone like thinking I'm special or different. It's like, yeah, you do. Everyone wants that. So we all want it, but it's how we seek it that is some people just go for it all the time. So for example, I get significance from these Facebook Lives. People say, woohoo, Miranda, well done. And I'm like, yay, great. I get significance from that. I think that's healthy. But other ways that might not be healthy are like a Donald Trump style. Like that man is just pursuing significance every single minute of his life. And he's doing it because that's how he learned to get love as a child, because I think his dad was like a narcissist, horrible did not love his children. So he learned to seek significance, even just to as part of his very survival. I think that's how important it is for him. So significance, the need to feel special and different. The next one is really obvious, love and connection. So this is my number one, and I go after love wherever I can get it. And sometimes I go after it in a bit of a negative way as well, so that's a whole other story. Maybe I'll bring it up later. But the point is that we all need love and connection. Some people settle for connection because they've been hurt too many times by love. So those people will go after like a kind of a poor version of love, and they will hold themselves back, and they will only go for, they won't seek commitment because they've been burned in the past. So we've got certainty, variety, significance, love and connection. Those are the 4 basic human needs. Then the next 2 are the kind of, they're almost like the beautiful needs. They're pretty much always glorious things, and they are growth and contribution. So the need to feel like we are growing, that we are changing ourselves, that we are improving ourselves, that we are learning different skills. There's a lot of this in aesthetics. So a lot of the reason I think that you guys chose to do aesthetics is because you probably felt a bit like, yeah, I've been doing nursing for 15 years, it's my time to grow and to invest in myself. So that's a beautiful one. And the next one is contribution. So I'm really on like a massive contribution kick at the moment, really enjoying contributing to you guys, giving you as much knowledge as I can about mindset. That's also a beautiful human need. Those are the 6 human needs. Tim thinks there's another one, which is autonomy, which is Tim's massively all about autonomy. Obviously, everyone needs it as well. So I don't quite know why Tony Robbins missed that off. Maybe we should tell him when we see him in April. Tony, you've missed one off. Anyway, so those are our 6 human needs, and they will inform our bad states. So I'll come on to that in a sec. So I'm going to dive in now to how the tools and tips and tricks about how to hack your brain so that you can improve your state and change your state. So I'm going to start with a baseline concept, which I'm going to draw a diagram of. Okay. So Tim, let me know if this diagram can be seen. It's a triad. I don't know what the difference between a triad is and a triangle, but someone told me it was a triad, so I'm going to go with that. On the triad, we have 3 categories of tools that will enable us to change our state. The first one is focus. The second one is, it's like language, stroke, meaning. And here is where you have questions. That's a juice one, a mega juice one. And down here we have physiology. So these are the ways that we're going to enable. Can you still see me? Yeah. These are the ways that we're going to allow ourselves to change our state. I did think with this talk I was going to structure it around 2 particular states problems, so resentment and like a depressive state, and I will touch on those. But I think when I actually got around to planning it properly, I'm just going to kind of dive in and out, but I'm going to structure it around the triad. And from the triad, I really want you guys to kind of keep that in your mind, but there's going to be particular little juice tools that come off the triad in the 3 areas. So let me dive into it now. Are you guys ready? Because this is going to blow your mind. And if you can keep this in your mind, then and use it during the day when you are in a crappy place, you are going to be like, hallelujah. So I'm going to start with focus because it's kind of the most obvious one, but it does not get used. So remember this: what you focus on, you feel. Another way of saying this is in The Secret. They talk about thoughts becoming things. If you focus on something, obviously you're going to feel it. And yet, how many times, guys, have you been locked into a particular way of thinking and you feel like you cannot stop thinking about that thing, about the bad thing, whether it be an anxiety thing that's making, like an example from medical aesthetics would be complications. So many people focus on the complications of, oh my God, I can't do lips because I'm obviously going to bruise someone. It happened last week. And they just get totally hooked. They are totally hooked by the focus, by what they are focusing on. And if they could only change their focus, that their whole state would change. Tim often says if we ever have like a and it'll like tiff before bedtime or whatever. He's always like, dude, let's just, sorry.
I never call you dude.
No, you don't call me dude. But he's like, maybe we should just stop talking about this in so much depth, because maybe we would just be okay if we just kind of... And I think there's something in that. It's like, I mean, it depends slightly on the nature of the conversation or of the bad state, but it's like, just think to yourself, if you're ever in like a, oh God, this thing, and then this thing, and then this thing, you know, just think to yourself, am I just focusing on that way too much? An example is that one of my gurus I follow, a guy called Joseph McClendon, he describes, grew up in Los Angeles, and he grew up in a place where it was like a classic kind of American road, you know, one of those roads where it's just like a road and then there's like nothing else either side of it, like almost like desert. In fact, I think it is desert. And it goes on for miles, and the only thing you can see is the road, and then every few hundred yards, or I don't know how often, but not very often, there is a lamppost. And he said he always used to marvel at the number of people that died from driving into those lampposts. And the reason he felt is that when their car would like slightly strip or sort of slit, they would just obsessively focus on avoiding the lamppost. And guess what? They go into the lamppost, because what you focus on, you feel. What you focus becomes your reality. And the reason for this, here comes the science bit, is that we have this thing in our brain, just forgive me if I kind of do some kind of hideous non-science version of this, but we have this, what I think of as the filter, the reticular activating system, because apparently at any one moment there are 40 million pieces of data that we could be taking in. So for example, we could be taking in the fact that there's some blood kind of coursing through a particular vein in our leg. We could be thinking about that, but it wouldn't be in our survival interest to do that, because it doesn't really matter that there's some blood going through a vein. So our reticular activating system makes us focus on those things that will really serve us and will allow us to get away from that saber-toothed tiger, or to go after the sexy person that we can bonk and then make lots of children with. You know, it's like, that's what it's seeking. It's not seeking the information that really doesn't serve us. But the thing with the reticular activating system is that often if your lizard brain is worried about the saber-toothed tiger of the potential complication from lips, it will focus on that shit, even though actually that ain't serving you, because that's old caveman software, as we've discussed a few times on my Facebook Lives. What you are focusing on doesn't serve you anymore. You need to upgrade your software. So I just want to give you an example of the reticular activating system. Have you ever bought a particular car, or like you've really obsessed about some jeans that you just really, or some Louboutin, you know, shoes or something like that, and once you get obsessed by them, you notice them everywhere. I had it when I got pregnant the first time. Suddenly all these pregnant women come out of the woodwork, and all these pregnant celebrities. Does anyone else have this, when you're like, dude, there are so many celebrities getting knocked up right now? And it's like, no, it's because you're knocked up and you're noticing them all. So that's the reticular activating system. Give me a thumbs up if anyone else has had that experience. So what you focus on, you feel. Shift your focus and you will be able to shift your bad state. Simple as. Doesn't always work, so we have to bring in some other tools, which I will come on to as well. So the next tool is one that I feel really strongly about, because I've had a massive amount of success with, which is language, meaning, and questions. So this is super powerful, I find, with the more energy-rich bad states. So by that I mean those states like resentment or anger, where you're just like, and like it's all bubbling up in you, and you're just obsessively thinking about it, and you're like, and then another thing, oh yeah, and another thing, oh no. You know, so for example, you might be at work, you might have had a meeting with your boss recently, your NHS boss, and you would like to reduce down your hours so that you can do more aesthetics. And you might have been maybe rejected, and in the one-to-one meeting that you had, maybe your boss was a little bit like, you know, you felt that she was a little bit like judgy about the aesthetics. And then, you know, that same day, Jean, there she is again. Jean's back again, and now she's ignoring you. Jean is ignoring you. You said hello to her in the morning, and Jean just was like, hello, didn't really give you much love. Now it's your birthday, and Jean and a little clique over there have only gone and forgotten your birthday, and you build up the resentment. All these things are going on. Reticular activating system's going wild because you want the certainty of being able to invest in the growth and contribution that comes from your aesthetics, and these people are taking it away from you. And I don't know if you guys ever have this where you have like a war in your head, so you'll be like driving along thinking about Jean and her bloody, their little crew, Jean and the crew, trying to stop me from doing aesthetics, and you're thinking about it and you're having a war in your head. So check this out. Before I used to start my personal development journey, I used to talk to myself in the car. I mean, seriously talk to myself in the car. I would be schooling everyone. I would be talking to particularly a couple of members of staff who were tricky. I'd be doing one-to-ones with them in the car, coming out with all this amazing leadership and never actually implementing it. So much so that what would often happen is I would be forced. So let's say that I avoided bad feedback. I avoided negative feedback with a particular member of staff. But what would happen is often circumstance would mean that I had to do it in the end. And what would happen is, because I had practiced, not practice, but because I'd gone over it in this ruminating, resentful way so much in the car, I would actually forget what was reality and what I had actually said and what I had said in the car. So I remember one time in particular, I had a meeting with this colleague and sort of fed back this negative thing. Afterwards, I had to kind of write it up, for HR reasons. I literally am thinking I don't know what I'm writing up. I don't know what just happened and what I have been ruminating about and doing in this kind of hideous car, schooling of her, for months. So that's a very kind of classic resentment state. And I have found that for resentment, language, this part of the triad, the language and the questions in particular, has been incredibly powerful for me. So here we go. Are you ready for the most powerful question? And if I could literally, if you said to me, on Desert Island Discs, on Desert Island Discs when they say, right, you've had your 8 discs, but if you could only keep one, if all the 8 discs were going to be washed away in the waves, which one would you keep? For me, if you said to me, if there's one thing that you keep from the whole of your personal development, it would be this question. So I hope it works as well for you as it has for me.
I feel like I should zoom in on this. It's important.
What am I making it mean? What am I making it mean? So let me explain this. This came from my coach, Maria, my old coach. I actually tried to Google it thinking, God, this is just such a killer question. I don't think I think it's just that she came up with it. It's the most amazing neurological hack. So let's say that you're in this resentment place and Jean's been winding you up, she didn't say hi to you very well today and she is, she's forgotten your birthday and whatever. You need to ask yourself this question: what am I making it mean? And by doing so, you loosen up the shackles of your resentment. Because in your resentment state, you are assuming that you are viewing reality. You are assuming that this terrible feelings that you have towards Jean is actually a reality. And it isn't. It really, really isn't. And if you want to take your life back and take control of your brain back, which I would suggest is a healthy thing, you have to ask this question to yourself. And I ask this question to myself almost daily. I think it's getting less because hopefully I'm kind of not going into such places as much. But I ask myself and I literally will say it out loud. What am I making it mean? What am I making it mean? So let me give you an example of this. Oh, could I just say before I do that? You need to then say, what else could it mean? What else could it mean? But I'll come on to that in a sec. So I'll give you an example of a time when I loaded on the most amount of meaning in this ludicrous cuckoo way, but it seemed so real to me at the time. So I mentioned Maria, my old coach. She left to go off and do some project work, and I got a new coach, part of the Tony Robbins coaching school thing. function, and I got a new coach, and I in between time I had this really like awful coach. She was Dutch, and she was just like really mad. Nothing to do with like her being Dutch, not being xenophobic. I just like she was just really mad. It didn't work, so I was a little bit like a little bit burned because I had such a phenomenal experience with Maria, and then this other one was weird. Then I got Kirsten, who is this lovely South African who lives in Madrid. It's great. It's just we have these phone calls. It's great, and I was kind of just building up trust with her. She's great, I've still got her, she's great. But I was building up trust with her. And one day, I was feeling a bit vulnerable. I was having kind of like quite a lot of thoughts about Maria because I really went through a grieving process when I lost her. That's a whole other story. And with Kirsten, one day, I was talking, and I heard her kind of shuffling around a bit. She was shuffling around a bit. And then I heard like a microwave go, or something like that. And I just fell apart. Because to me, in that moment, she was not present with me. She didn't care about me. She wasn't Maria. Then all this meaning starts coming up, like the clouds start forming. I don't know whether you guys have this, where the clouds start forming, you start spiraling, and you're like, oh. So then these are all the meanings I loaded on. This really happened. So she's beeping this. I think it turned out to be a coffee machine because I asked her about it. She's beeping this coffee machine, just trying to get a coffee during our coaching call, which to be fair, I don't think is great. Like I wouldn't have done that, but it wasn't that bad. I'm like, oh my God, she's not present. She doesn't care. I'm not worthy of being cared about. How often do you make it about you? All the time. That's what was at the base, that I'm not worthy of love and belonging. Then I start thinking, oh God, right. So Kirsten's a write-off. I'll have to sack her as well, like I did with that weird Dutch one. That's it. I'm alone. All my personal development is down the toilet. Because have you guys ever had these kind of like cuckoo kind of things? All my personal development, 18 months worth of all this investment, it's been wonderful. I've really tasted the rainbow with like what I can achieve with my life. And now it's all down the toilet because Kirsten pressed the microwave or the coffee machine. Because to me, it took me back to that place of loss that I had with Maria. So I'm alone, like the whole personal development is down the tubes. And I had a classic fight or flight or freeze moment. So someone the other day was talking about how they'd had a terrible complication with lips, and they had a flight moment where they're just like, I am flying away from these lips, like I ain't doing lips anytime soon. And I really said to her, like, you have to come back and you have to do them, because it's never healthy to do that caveman lizard brain thing of flight, or freeze. I hung the phone up. I couldn't handle it. I didn't say you bitch or anything. I just hung the phone up, sat there crying, and I thought, this is ridiculous. So I rang her back and I told her what I was making it mean. She was super apologetic and was like, God, I really need to be present with you. And she gave me like a free session and stuff, and it was all fine. And we've built back trust up ever since. But you can see that the meaning, what am I making it mean, was just not a reality. So then if I asked myself, what else could it have meant in that moment? What else could it mean? So for example, in the gene example, let's give a medical aesthetics example. So let's say that you've had a complication with lips, and now you're like, right, that's a write-off. I am appalling at lips. It's official. Everyone knows. I'm just awful. Everyone's going to be harmed when they come my way. Forget it. Don't worry. It's fine, Liz Brain. I just won't ever do lips again. That's fine. I'll cut myself off from this amazing opportunity with lips. So but the meaning you're giving that is, I will harm people. People will hate me. My business will go under. I will lose my NMC pin. Then I will not be able to feed my children, and they'll be eating baked beans. It's that, it goes down like that. And it comes down right at the bottom too. I am not worthy. I am not worthy. And so that's the meaning that you're giving it. What else could it mean? Loads of things. It could mean that you're just quite new to something and you should practice on more family and friends, for example, or whatever it might be, on people who are models, on who are at cost and who accept that there might be more complications. What else could it mean? That complications just happen, that there's a certain amount of chance that shit is normal. So these are the other things it could mean. With Kirsten, what did it mean? It just meant that this is an interesting one as well. it meant that she didn't have the same value that I place on presence. So I'm incredibly, like, I have a massive value on giving people my all. I remember Tim used to really moan because back in the day when we used to do demo nights together, I would, like, the salon manager would still be kind of twittering away to me when the whole thing had finished. And I'd be like, oh yeah, like, you know, just keeping dead present with them and kind of just really giving them my all. And Tim would be like, dude, it's like, doesn't call me dude. He's like, you know, it's like 9:30 at night. We need to get back. You know, it's like this, you're not adding value anymore. You're just stroking someone's ego. But I have a great value. I place a great value on presence. But that's just my value. And sometimes you have to say to yourself, you know, is it just my value? What am I making it mean? What else could it mean? So, guys, if you take one thing from tonight, get that question, tattoo it on your arm and ask yourself, just challenge yourself, what am I making it mean? You are changing the meaning. Okay, so I'm going to go on to a little bit more of a less energy rich state now. So if you are in more of like I'm slightly reluctant to use the word depressive state because I worry that people think I'm going to be like, oh, depression, oh, don't worry about depression, I've got a couple of tools. You know, I don't mean that. Like, obviously depression is a really serious mental health issue, which I have had and lots of people that are close to me have had. I'm not saying I'm going to solve it here, but I want to talk about states. Okay, so I'll describe it. So you know the state. You are stuck. You don't want to move away from your phone or away from a place, like you're in the bed, you know, curled up in the fetal position. You don't want to move because you don't feel that you don't feel that if you move, anything's going to change. In fact, Tim, can I ask you to help with a little bit with like the dog under the bed analogy with regards to like a depressive state? Tell us a little bit about it.
I use this analogy with anxious patients and depressed patients in GP in particular, but actually you can use it on yourself as well. And it's this concept that we too often, when we get in a position that we're unhappy with, you know, kind of on the low end of the mental health spectrum, you start to try and rationalize yourself out of it. And what I always say is, if you had a dog, an anxious dog, you know, one of those rescue dogs that's had a bad life, you couldn't rationalize it out from under the bed where it was hiding. You have to talk to the unconscious, the more animal side of the brain. So it's those lower. It's not your frontal lobe. It's not the logical part of your brain. You have to do something that emotionally changes the state of the animal. So if it was a dog, you'd be kind of kindly calling out and giving it a bit of food and stroking it and making it feel safe. And that would get it to break its pattern and to move into a different realm of being more active. And that's exactly what you can do. I think that's what you're leading up to.
Yeah. I think it's that kind of like that low energy state where you just feel stuck and you feel out of control. Tell us a bit more about control.
Well, control's a huge part of it, and this is anyone who saw my YouTube video about just doing one thing that moves you forward. Or there's a great viral video of a US Navy captain talking about the power of making your bed.
Yeah.
So your brain basically either is feeling powerful or it's not. You know, there's somewhere in between, but there's a spectrum of how much impact it thinks it can make, and if you focus on things you can't control for too long, you basically withdraw. You're doing less and less. You feel more and more reactive. You feel less and less in control of your own life, basically. And if you can choose one thing that you can control, decide you're going to do it, and then execute on that, it changes the brain state. Your actual state of consciousness becomes more like, well, maybe I can change things in my own life. And you start to do more and more stuff. So it's about focusing on the thing that you can control, even if you're in a difficult situation with because most of us can't control most things in life, like we really can't. But it's depressing or it's anxiety driving to focus on all the things you can't control instead of focus on the things that you can control.
Yeah, super, thank you. Okay. But the general point that I was trying to get across is that actually the depressive state, the low energy stuck state, is because you think, well, why? Like, you're subconscious, you're thinking, why would I even bother trying to do this thing? Because it isn't going to have an impact on the world, because I am, you know, worthless or whatever it might be, and I'm not going to have that impact. So, depressive states are, I do find, like Tim says, I find this one doesn't work as well, this language and meaning and questions, because you've kind of, by the time you've got into a depressive low energy state, you're just stuck. Like, you're not going to be listening to any kind of like smart ass questions. You're just like, fuck off world, fucking go, you know, that's what I feel like when I'm in a depressive state. So what tends to work better for those states, I would suggest, is physiology. So this is the idea that if you're struggling to change your focus and you can't think of any kind of like cunning language questions, you know, meaning changes, and you're just totally stuck, then I find that the only way really that I've found to change this is physiology. So an example that you guys are already familiar with is the power move that I talked about last week in the confidence talk. And yeah, confidence. So you actually, when I was trying to teach you guys about how to use that to feel more confident and that you are going to win the world, actually, if you can have certain moves that get you going when you're in that low energy depressive state, then that can work wonders as well. So I don't know that you would necessarily kind of go from being in the fetal position to being like, hello, I don't think that's going to work. But what I tend to do is that even if you just take one step, and then think, right, go on then, I'll take another step. And if you can keep doing that, if you can get yourself to just stand up and put one tiny foot in front of the other, and I'm going somewhere with this, so kind of a bit more of a fun place a fun tool that you can use. But if you can just make yourself move, then that is.
Sorry, so can just be about averting your gaze, just looking up. The smallest thing you can do is just to look up. Just to look up. And there's an amazing guru type person in the personal world called Mel Robbins. She's kind of made a career out of this one concept, which is the 5-4-3-2-1 concept. It's another neurological hack, and I use it for getting out of bed, which is kind of, because you know when you're in the morning, it does feel a bit like, oh god, it's kind of similar energy even if you aren't depressed. She says that you should just say to yourself, if you're completely stuck, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and your brain is more inclined to get up on that one because it's kind of learned. I don't quite understand the neuroscience a bit, whatever, but it's learned to move on one in a Thunderbird's kind of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Another one is don't think, just do. There's something quite physiological about that one, which I told you guys about in the procrastination video. Don't think, just do. Don't think, just do. Don't think, just do. And that can be the standing up. The doing can just be the standing up, not rocking out your to-do list or whatever. So there's something about just standing up. Now, some more fun tricks if you have been able to stand up. So I have this thing. I feel like the depressive state is quite a lot like the procrastination state as well, you know, when you're just kind of like on your phone, like doing anything but the thing that you know you want to do that will move you forward. If you're in that state, I sometimes get like that in the evening. So when I come home after the kids have gone down, I then do 3 hours of work. And that can sometimes be quite hard because even though I know I logically want to do it, if I'm super tired and I'm kind of like, oh God, I got stuck. And, you know, next thing I know it, just stuck on Facebook. So what I do for myself is I shake that ass. So this is a mega one that we learn through Tony Robbins. Super simple, but basically boogieing is such an amazing state change. When you, I mean, again, like you ain't going to be boogieing if you really are in the fetal position. But if you're kind of somewhere in the middle, kind of like half fetal, then actually going and showing the world. I'm not saying anyone's watching you, but this is how I view it. When I go out into the garden at 11 o'clock at night and dance, literally, I am showing the world and myself that I am powerful. It feels so fucking good. I put on an amazing tune. Of course, songs are very physiological as well. And I go out and I just go wild. And it's so funny because Tim sometimes will reconvene at night and we'll be doing our teeth together. And they'll be like, oh, what's going on with your trousers? You've got all mud up your trousers. And that's because I literally go out into my garden. I love it. I quite like it when you say that because I'm like, yeah, I've been boogieing. You didn't even know. And that's the thing. It's like I go out and I just break my pattern. Because sometimes it can just be a case of almost like distracting yourself like a 2-year-old. Think of yourself, your lizard brain as a 2-year-old. You know when a 2-year-old's like, oh, I want to watch Peppa Pig for the 50 millionth time, and you're like, woo, 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 chocolate, chocolate, chocolate. And the 2-year-old's like, oh yeah, chocolate. You know, that's what you need to do to yourself. You need to hack yourself and just break the pattern. Just change your focus if you can, and if you can't, change your body.
do a little move, like get into your power move, whether it's like something as concrete as this, or whether it's just shoulders back, or whether, as Tim says, it's as small as raising your eyes up from that terrible place. Just raise your eyes up. It's like, you know, when you take a before and after picture, and what's really beautiful sometimes is that the majority of the time I find is that the after picture, they're ever so slightly smiling. And I think that's because they've had their self-esteem raised in that moment. You know, they just feel that little bit better about themselves, and you see it in their physiology. It's incredibly powerful. So, physiology, shake that ass. That's one thing that you can do. Just literally dance. I remember when we first came back from the Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within seminar, which we're going to again in a couple of weeks' time. Literally, I'm like boogieing in the toilets of Skin Viva regularly. I'm like, woohoo, just going for it, getting myself into an energy-rich state so that I can actually do what I want to do, and you know, give to the world in the way I want to, and not give in to my lizard brain and my old patterns. So, I want to move on to, what do you do if you actually don't even want to change your state? So Tim and I have identified this quite a few times. Let's say that you're in an angry place, or a resentful place, or a really depressed place, particularly if someone else has done something to you. And you're like, so let's say you're changing your the way you're doing things now. You're recognizing that you can change your state, and you're like, woohoo, I'm going to really try. And actually, you're sitting on the sofa, and if you admit to yourself, you don't actually want to change. You don't want to go into the garden. You don't want to count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You don't want to. And the reason you don't is because you feel that you've got something to lose by doing that. You actually, this state that you've got yourself into, a resentful one, an angry one, a depressed one, this state is actually... What's that? Just tell me.
50 minutes.
I've been doing it 50 minutes?
45 now. Lisa.
Jesus, right, sorry, God. Sorry. that's blowing my mind. I feel like it's been about 15. That state is actually, you've invested in that. You actually have, like, you've got shares in that terrible state. You actually, if you come away from that now, you feel like there might be an injustice. You know, that you that person that you are resentful towards has actually never, you know, they have not been given what for yet. And actually, in that moment, you've got to say to yourself, okay, but what do I stand to gain if I do lose that investment in that terrible state that I've already made? And the answer to what you've got, well, the answer is individual to you, but you need to think of the word, I think which one this comes into, I think it's this one, exchange. You need to think, what am I exchanging? I'm part exchanging this bad state for something else. And for me, an example would be that I've got a shitload invested in my personal development. I'm on this journey. I've tasted the rainbow. I know how good it can be. I don't want to go back there. So yes, even if I am feeling a bit like, oh yeah, the bastards, you know, resenting. Actually, if I say to myself, what do I actually want? What do I want? Oh, I want something, I'm going to exchange it. Then you don't feel like it's a loss because you're just exchanging it for something else. So that can be really, really powerful if you actually just call yourself into account and say, you want to be here. And just going briefly back to the 6 needs. Oftentimes we stay in our bad places because it's certain. It's very certain. It's the cave. You know, if we feel depressed, then if we feel depressed and we stay in that fearful place, we don't have to take any risks. We don't have to go out. We don't have to love. We don't have to put our money on the line. We don't have to put our investment of time on the line. We don't have to risk giving someone a complication. It's safe. It's certain. You are having your needs fulfilled, and you have to admit that, or else you will never relinquish those needs and move on to things that you know you actually want. Another example of this is significance. This is a massive one. You are getting significance often from this resentful place. You're getting connection with yourself because you're like, oh yeah, they're the bastards. Yeah, I agree, Miranda, they're such bastards. You know, you're getting connection with yourself. You're getting significance. You're getting certainty. You feel like you're right. You are right. While you're in that's when I was ranting at those nobody people that didn't exist in the car, I was significant in that moment. and it's just not healthy, and it doesn't get you where you want to go. So you have to ask yourself, what can I exchange it for, and what do I actually want? Okay, so final thing that I want to sort of help you with, if all else fails, and you are still in the pit and you haven't been able to change your focus, change your questions, exchange it for anything, change your physiology, you've got to rage. Okay, so I'll explain this. When my nana died, my dad asked me to read a poem at her funeral, which was, it was a Dylan Thomas poem, Do Not Go Gently Into That Dark Night, I think. Rage against the dying of the light. And I remember when I was asked to do it, Tim and I both had this thought independently. This is a little bit weird. My nana was such a sweetheart. She was quite like me, really strong and everything, but she was a massive sweetheart. And it was a bit odd that I was doing this quite kind of like reading this poem about raging and not going gently into the night to death. And I read it and it was fine, and I enjoyed doing it, and it got a good response. And afterwards, a few months later, Tim said to me, I get it now, because she had chosen that poem. What my nana was doing by raging against death, raging against that awful, inevitable bad state, the ultimate bad state, she was angrily raging against it. She was giving everything that she could give to hang on to life so that she could love and contribute and grow and all of those beautiful things. And in order for her to make the very most of her life, she had to rage against the dying of the light. There's something about being just not accepting it and actually using the angry part of you to challenge yourself and say, am I really going to accept this pattern that I've been running for 35 years when I self-soothe, or I'm irritable, or I'm, mean to my children, or I'm a bitch to my husband, or I am a dick to my wife, or whatever it might be. All of those bad states, or I'm, self-loathing, all of those states, ultimately, when all is said and done, you have to rage against them, because you will never have the life of your dreams. You will never have freedom and lightness and all of those gorgeous things. Sometimes you have to just rage against the dying of the light. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope that's been of some value. I would love for you guys to let me know how this talk has been for you. It's something I feel really passionate about, but it is a tricky one, because I think sometimes we do just want to hold on to our bad states, but you need to challenge yourself. Get real with yourself. What are you getting from your bad state? And use some of these tools, particularly this one. What am I making it mean? What else can it mean? What else? What else? What else? Loosen up that lizard brain, or else it will win. Any questions or anything? Anything you wanted to?
We have no questions. Can I add one thing
Cool.
on? If you want to think of a reason why you should battle against negativity and shift your brain into a more positive state, is because it's by far the most entrepreneurial state. Nobody in this group called up and booked a course on us in a bad state. Everyone was excited, everyone was looking for the future, everyone saw opportunity, and that is what, when you're in a good state, you see opportunity. Your brain is resourceful, your brain is alive, and it's imagining this, and it's imagining all the things it can do and create. And if you can control that state, whatever problem you're dealing with, you're going to solve it 10 times quicker, because you're in a positive place. So you should never try and solve a problem when you're in a negative place. You'll come up with a load of rubbish that's negative and destructive. If you can get yourself into a positive, happy, powerful place, basically, you'll just basically think through it clearly. You'll come up with more inventive ways out of it, and you'll get through it much better. So that, for me, that's one of the ways I can get out of a negative state, is I can think of all these problems I'm trying to solve, well, the worst way I could possibly solve them would be to do it in a negative state. I've got to get myself into a positive state, then think about the problem, and I will come out of it much better.
Which is the killer strategist in you and the entrepreneur in you as well, which is a massive value to you. Right, guys. Okay. I will look forward to seeing you next week for more Facebook Live action, and please let me know if this has been of value. I love you loads. I'm enjoying this so much, and take care. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.